Welcome to Sharing Hope. My name is Jamie George, and I'm your host. And our guest today is Jayne Jewell. Jayne first started training to become a mindset coach at the age of 13 years old. How about that? Imagine that, being a coach at 13. She went on to become a master trainer and a coach for over 2 decades. She spent time with some of the most influential business leaders and spiritual leaders in the world. Today, her mission is to help small businesses and business owners become more successful than they ever dreamed possible, by adding ease and flow to their lives and achieving the results they crave. Jayne, thanks for hanging out with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Wow, that intro is like, oh my gosh, he gets me.
Well, in this case, you have helped me personally so often, and I'm grateful for the guidance you have added value to my life. Your guidance has certainly been a North Star for me, so I'm grateful. I'm a better person because of it. You've been at this for a long time, since you were 13 years old. We got to hear just a little of that story as a young kid, just going, the leaving home thing, the like striking out on your own to do something. I mean, most people don't do this at 13 years old. So could you just give us a little bit of your story there in the early days?
Yeah, it is extraordinary when I think about it. At the time, it didn't feel extraordinary. It just felt like what you do. But now having children, and I go, wow, the first time I did a personal development, program is now a year younger than what my daughter is now. So it's kind of like, I guess that was kind of cool, right? Like, that was pretty cool. So, my mom was a different mom than what most people had in that time in the Midwest. And she had a friend come over that said, hey, I'm doing this like crazy thing, walking on fire, and she was a crystal loving, tree hugging, whatever, type of person. And I heard what it was, and I wanted to go do this program, and I did, and I loved it. I felt like lights turned on, that I had always felt like I was. I think I was always born more of a driver, a doer, and over, go for what you want. And I felt a little out of fish out of water a little bit. It was a stage in my life, as well, around that age, where my parents were going through a divorce and, of course, upheaval in the family. And so when I went and did this program, I felt like I was home. And I learned, that I could look at things different. I could choose what things meant. I got to put my own perception on how I was seeing the world. And I thought that was pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
And so at 13, I was certified in neuro-linguistic programming and some other, coaching and therapy skills. And so when I did my first, intervention or coaching session with someone, it was the most amazing feeling in the entire world, because I felt like I kind of got out of the way and, just it flowed through me, and seeing the light shine in someone's eyes where they're like, they experience their own greatness, their own beauty, their own transformation. And I think right in that moment, I was like, this is what I'm about. This is what I want to do. And then, of course, the people that are around that environment are also super cool and great. And so, my summer camps then became going and helping out and being a part of these types of programs. And I went on to then, this is kind of what I've always done, is coaching and training.
What I love about you is you see that and the light, people of faith often are using that as a phrase, because a lot of spiritual teaching is, hey, we're the light of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that so quickly with people. You're able to kind of see through all the junk, all the stuff, all the brokenness, and see kind of that God space, that Imago Dei part of who people are. Has that taken some training for you? Do you see people at times and forget completely and go, oh my gosh, that person's a moron? Do you, because I do feel like you have this ability to go, I can see kind of who they could become, and maybe I can see for them what they can't see in themselves. Is that taking a while to develop that? Is that still a practice you have to put in place every day?
I think it's a little bit of that unconscious competence. Like it's just part of who I am now. It's part of my identity. So I don't have to think about that
Hmm.
now. Not to say I don't ever look over at someone driving and go, "You're a moron." Like, so I have the moments of "you're a moron" for sure, but never when I'm interacting with someone or working with someone or uh, not like that. There might be the moment of the moron, but the moron doesn't stay.
Yeah. And what is there something that when you kind of see the potential in people, when they start to share some of their story or some of their struggles, do you follow patterns? How is it that you begin to see, and you're pretty good at, you've done this with me, I've experienced it, where you ask really great questions, you kind of just show like a mirror back, like, okay, this is what you're saying. Is that a process that, again, is developed over time, or is that part of again, it's just so natural for you, it just comes automatic? Do you have to kind of turn it on?
I don't think I have to turn it on. I think it's always operating in the background for sure. Like it's just there. But I think that it is definitely something, that someone can take on. So I teach coaching, I teach training, and so it's something that you can cultivate and get better and better at. And let's say back even my young 20s or where I was traveling all over the world doing these things. I think who I am today obviously is so very different that I've added this dynamic of, let's hope, some wisdom,
Yes.
some experience,
Yeah.
and maybe even the patterns of seeing things. But I think the biggest thing that anyone can cultivate is a couple of real core beliefs. And a core belief that I have is that people have every intention to do good, right? Like I just believe people are good. I think sometimes things operate on top of that. Sometimes things get in the way. Sometimes their history, their stories, their beliefs, all of that can get in the way, but people are all lights. And so when I'm working with someone or interacting with someone, it's always about where's their light? What part of them is a light? And so the first step I always do in talking to someone is looking for the things that I appreciate about them, and looking for the things that their gifts, their talents, and what are the things that I can pull forth in them that will, and shine the light on those things. Because
Yeah.
those things, then you get to have resourcefulness. You can't solve a problem in what's not working. You can only solve the problem in the light.
Mm. And so you're helping really go, because I do think sometimes we get so hung up on the original sin, we forget the original blessing. Like we're so hung up on what's not working that we forget there is something inherently that we were created by the divine. So it's almost like, yeah, I remember this phrase, a reticular activating device, like that part of your brain that just starts to see the same thing over and over again. Like, oh, I want to buy a Honda. Suddenly there are Hondas everywhere. Like it feels like you've trained yourself to see, like, there's something in you. There it is.
Yes.
And you really do give some focus to that and help them see it. Because I think a lot of us walk around and we're just really aware of what's not working.
Mm-hmm.
And is that part of it to go, hey, no, look at what's happening in you and have some gratitude for this? Is that a foundational place for people that feel stuck and want to change?
Yeah. One of the things that I often talk with and train on are the emotional, like the habitual emotional states that you live in your day-to-day life, right? So by, emotional state, that would be, anger, frustration, joy, happiness, gratitude, tired, lonely, right? Those are all emotional states. And so what happens throughout time is we condition habitual emotional states, emotions that you tend to live in most often.
Mm.
And so some of these other states of being in gratitude, for most people, they have to cultivate. They have to cultivate it. And by daily practice, it's not something that just happens for most of us. There might be a significant emotional event where somebody goes through the healing of something or the trauma of something or surviving of something. And all of a sudden they're really present to gratitude. and they start to see the world a little bit differently, right? Once they're like, something happened, I'm on the other side of it, I'm so gracious, I'm so blessed. And throughout time, if you don't continue to focus on the blessings, it kind of starts to dissipate again. So it has to be an intentional practice where you are focused on gratitude. You're focused on those blessings, and not focused on it in just an intellectual, but actually feel it. And so when I teach that gratitude practice, it has to have an emotional connection. Like, it literally has to change how you feel. Otherwise, it's just an intellectual exercise.
It's so fascinating. I had a guy, an author I was reading, he was talking about on your calendar, when you think about what you're writing for the day, he goes, what did you write? Like, what did you write down? I'm like, well, well, I got work and I got interviews. And he's like, but is there an emotion to it? And so I wrote down my opportunity to add value to people's lives and meet the needs of my family. And he's like, okay, is there, like, literally even set on your calendar to write down descriptors, because otherwise it's just intellectual. It's just a placeholder. We are emotional beings, aren't we? And we forget that sometimes, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. That emotion, and that he's totally onto something. When I plan my week, it's the same way. Instead of it just being, work.
Yeah.
There is an outcome. Like, for example, even in my health, it might be the outcome for the week is love, honor, and cherish my body. And then I write down the why. What does that give me? How does that make me feel? Why does that make my life better? And then comes the action. Do my daily ritual. 3 times. Schedule a doctor appointment. That's the actions. But it's the focusing on the outcome and the why that really gives life juice.
Talk more about that outcome thing, because that really is significant. If we focus on, because most of us are just in the daily actions. I got to do this. I got to get this done. I get in tyranny the urgent. I got to get, or now maybe it's not even urgent with quarantine. I'm actually kind of bored. So what should I do today? If it's outcome focused, how does that shift how we enter the day?
Oh, everything. I got to tell you, I don't go to the grocery store without asking myself, what's my outcome? And it's like, truly, it's like I'm going to the grocery store, I'm like, what's my outcome? My outcome is to have 5 healthy meals that I actually enjoy cooking and get out of here in 10 minutes. So I'm always focusing in on the outcome. What do I want? What do I really want? No, what do I really want? And it almost, gets in those levels. Because the first thing is always just like what's right in front of you. I want to lose 10 pounds. Is that what you want? No, what I really want is I want to be healthy and fit. Okay, what else do you really want? I want to be healthy and fit and love the skin I'm in and weigh X amount of pounds, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you really want. That's what you really want. So really, going those layers deeper. And so doing that, whether you're setting goals as opposed to, hey, I want to make $1 million. What do you really want? And adding in a little bit of those descriptors. So whether it's in setting goals or in your weekly planning, or even at the end of the day. So I work from home and I'm sitting in my office almost all day long. And then it's the end of the day and it's time to go out and hang out with family. So I can either just walk out and kind of the family night goes how the family night goes, or stop for a second and kind of go, okay, so what's my outcome? My outcome is to go, I have teenagers, I'm lucky I get a half an hour. My outcome is to go out there and have an amazing dinner and connect with my 15-year-old son. And so that's an outcome, because now it's about what I want to experience out there and who I want to be out there, as opposed to like, I'm just going to have dinner.
So good. So that's a great coaching hook. Just, for us, a great question, just to, hey, what do I really want? And then ask it again. Like, you could ask the same question 3 or 4 times, right? Wait, what do I really want? Wait, what do I really want? What is the desire that's really down deep? And sometimes I think for some of us, we actually have been trained very well to pay attention to our desires, almost like they're kind of bad.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a kind of a Judeo-Christian heritage. I'm a pastor's kid. Sometimes there's so much focus on like doing things for others it was kind of bad to do something for me. And I kind of grew up a little bit with a martyr thing, like, well, I guess life should be, generally unsatisfying and unhappy, but as long as I'm doing things for other people, then I guess I'm doing the right thing. It took
Yeah.
a little while to recognize I'm one of the other people. I mean, I guess probably I should feel loved and enjoy life just like I'm trying to do for other people too.
That's
And
right.
yeah, so getting in touch with desires for some people, I think is hard. It was for me for a long time. How do you help people kind of break through the barrier of going, hey, it's actually okay to have some desires. Pay attention to that.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that I would do is find out the why behind it. So if someone were to come to me and say, "Hey, I feel like it's wrong to want some things for myself," and so the first thing I would ask is, "What would happen if you did? Like,
Mm.
what does that mean? And what would it mean if you did things for yourself?" So for you, for example, if you said, "Well, it's selfish," that will come up a lot. It's selfish to want things for myself.
Yes. Oh, I would have definitely said that. Yeah.
Right. And so, the keys in any kind of coaching is finding out the what that they really want. And almost always people are going to tell you what they don't want, and shift
Mm.
that into what you really want. And then find out, well, what's preventing you from having that? What is preventing you from having what you want? So in this instance, it would be like, so what you want is, would you like to have a breakthrough in your ability to know that it's okay to want some joyful, awesome things for yourself? Is that what you want?
Yes, I
Yes,
do.
right? And so if that's what you're gonna say, okay, well, what's preventing you from having that? What is the thought? What is the belief? What's the thing standing in the way? And so there's always only two things standing in the way from you having whatever it is that you want. Only two things. Doesn't make it simple or easy, but it's only two things. It's the way you're thinking about what you want,
Mm.
and then it's the strategy. There's only two things. There's only two things.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
And so what I would go to work on first is always the thinking, my psychology, the deep-rooted beliefs that have been conditioned throughout time, whether from your story, your history, from your references, from what you've conditioned throughout time, through the way you meet your needs, right? And so just finding a way to change a perception opens up everything.
Mm.
And it's just about asking the right questions so that the person that you're working with gets to come up with those from themselves, while you're using a framework to kind of help them move where they want to go.
So good. I'm like right now, like I gotta remember thinking and strategy. Those are the two. So for those who are listening, and I run into this a lot, and as I'm coaching folks, they go, "Hey, that seems cool. Like I think I'd like to be a coach. I find it fascinating when people have breakthroughs. I love being around people when they have an epiphany. To be able to participate in someone's journey would have a lot of meaning." What would you say to somebody who's curious or interested? And maybe especially during this quarantine, they've had plenty of time to think about, or maybe they have to have a job change. What would you say to somebody who's interested in that? How would they begin to explore that if that was even something for them?
Yeah. So first off, if someone's having that thought, I think it says a lot about the person having the thought. And what I mean by that is, it means they're up to helping people living a better life. They're up to like opening up possibility. They're up to being on a path with someone to have them um, just feel better. Like my mission is to help people move out of everyday suffering and into, loving who they are and embracing who they are. And so, I think intrinsically, like anyone who wants to be a coach, for the most part, it has those same thoughts that they want to help people move into more happiness, more joy, and more love. And so I think that says a lot about someone.
Hmm.
As far as moving into like, should I be a coach or not be a coach? I think the thing to remember, and this might be a point where I do sound a little snobbish, in that if you want to go be a coach, I'd say get some training. And I
Yeah.
say that because this is an industry where a lot of really good, well-intentioned people want to go out and save the world. And they're doing it from a place of really super great intention. and might not have the skills or a framework in order to move someone from where they are to where they want to go, and move them through that and that transformation in a way that's really, really powerful.
Yes.
So, I think that there's a difference between, being a mentor. You've been there before,
Yeah.
and you can mentor someone on that strategy or your way of thinking and your beliefs around that. And then there's, those really awesome friends that always give you really good advice, right? And then there's therapists that are helping you kind of move through some kind of pain or trauma, or, maybe some other biochemical type things. And a coach, to really be a good coach, you have to have the ability, like you were talking about a few minutes ago, to find out what do you want and what's really preventing you from getting there. And being able to move through that and jump into someone else's view of the world and move them through that process. What it's not about is telling you, hey, you know what, Jamie, let me tell you how I would do this. And a lot of coaching, a lot of people are just kind of well-intentioned, giving them their view of their world. Hey, if you just think like me, it'll be different for you.
Yeah.
And it's never about, hey, I got to think like you. It's got to be about uncovering the things that are standing in the way, the thoughts that aren't working. And I think that takes some skill. That takes some something to that.
Yeah. I was going to say, do you feel like there's an art to listening? In the coaching might be 80 to 90% listening. Would that be a fair, when I say to people talking to me about coaching, I'm like, I spend most of my time listening and asking questions and celebrating their own insight. I don't actually spend a lot of time persuading people toward my perspective. When I'm teaching, I'm kind of at a different mode, right? But coaching is much more to do with listening. Would that be fair?
I do. I think that it's definitely the listening part is really important, but I think it also goes deeper of knowing what to listen for.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think you've had years, and it's one of those unconscious confidence things that that you are already good at. Right? But knowing what to listen for and asking the questions that move people toward where they want to go. And that's a really important thing, because questions direct our focus direct our emotions, and then like that emotion is going to direct our actions.
Yeah.
And so if you're asking a silly question, how was your day? Well, your day could go either way. I could tell you everything that happened that was yucky about my day. Or if you said, what was great about your day? What was the best thing that happened today? That's going to change my focus, and it's going to be a whole different conversation. So yes, it's listening, knowing what to listen for, and knowing the right questions is going to move people in the direction they want to go and pull out their resourcefulness in their life.
I love that. One of the things that I often, I don't know when I started this, but when I say, hey, how's your day? And somebody goes, it's good. I often will just say, what would it look like for it to be from good to great? What would be the difference? Yeah. And suddenly it's an interesting conversation, right? Especially if you're just walking through the grocery store, they go, okay, what would take you from okay to good? But suddenly it's an interesting conversation. You're right, because questions are directive.
Yes. And you're always trying to answer a question. You ask a question, your brain is going to search for the answer. It's just what we do.
Yes. And a question creates tension immediately, because you're like, well,
you start searching for the answer. It's like a little computer up there, right?
Yeah, that's good.
And so you ask good questions, and you start to get really good answers.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So I have an important question for you. I've been asking this question to everybody on all my interviews. Can you go to a time in your life where you felt some uncertainty, and what was it like? And if it's a part in your story, maybe tell us how you got through it, or if it's in real time, because we talked a little bit before we started.
Yeah.
Just talk about what it's like when you feel the uncertainty, and eventually, what are some processes that you would employ to move through it?
Yeah. So this is like that question. I was like, I don't know. What is and I certainly have had struggle in life. As humans, we do that, right? Life happens all around us, and you have moments of struggle or sadness or or what have you. And so when I was thinking about this question of what created uncertainty, and it's interesting because that question alone, you kind of go to like, where are the parts where my life kind of didn't do what I wanted it to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and where was that tension?
Right.
So I think back to, you know, my parents getting divorced around that age, 12, 13. And, you know, or my dad died when I was 14. And, you know, and in different parts of my life, you know, my brother died a couple of years ago. And I feel like even looking at that, I don't know that it created uncertainty as much as it kind of took me into, there's moments of grief or sadness for this grieving of, I thought life was going to be this way, and now it's not that way, you know? And so it's like this grieving of this future you thought you were going to have that now doesn't feel possible, maybe.
I wonder if sometimes we mix up those two words, because in the West, we're not real great at grieving. Like what? We're like, I'm really struggling with the uncertainty. What if we're actually dealing with grief and don't know it? Is that possible?
I think that's definitely possible. I mean, typically when something like that happens, you know, especially a loss of something, you know, or even a loss of a job, right?
Yeah. Or loss of the freedom to go outside and be with people.
Yes, because you're like, I thought life was this way.
Yeah.
I was going to get a promotion next month. I was going to go on vacation next month. I was going to, you know, go to my kid's graduation. And it's like this grieving of now I don't get to have that. Like life isn't going to be the way that I have already been, you know, future visioning. My future pace of where I'm going is now no longer that. And, you know, so I think there is a little bit of that grief. And so when I think back and try to answer your question, you know, there are moments I felt uncertainty, but those times or seasons that I felt really uncertain, honestly, were pretty short-lived. And I say short-lived because the uncertainty was usually more around my suffering over having to make a decision, right? Should I move to Nashville? Should I not move to Nashville? Should I stay in this job? Should I move jobs? Should I marry this person? Should I not marry this person? Should I date it? Right? Like those are more, but within my complete influence and control, right? Like I got to make those decisions.
Yeah. So it was brief because ultimately I just have the moment where I'm waiting to decide, but I am going to make a decision.
Right. And it's like this, you know, and believe me, I've suffered over, you know, the hardest part about making decisions is like, it's never making the decision. It's all the stuff you put yourself through until you make it. Right? And then you make the decision and it's great. You know,
Yeah.
I made the decision. Yahoo! Let's make the decision, you know, and it's all great. But I think what's different during this time right now is, yes, I think probably now that you said it, is some of that grief and this uncertainty, like it's uncertain times because there's no knowing of an end, I think a little bit, right? So that makes things uncertain. It's kind of like if I go to the gym or I have a trainer and they're like, 25 push-ups. I'm like, great, no problem, 25 push-ups. If they say, do push-ups till I say stop, I'm like, are you kidding me? How many do I have to do?
Yes, totally.
How many I have to do? I don't want a never-ending push-up thing. Right. I want to know.
Right.
Like, with the knowing, I got 10 more, I can handle it.
Yes.
You know? And
that's a great picture. That's totally true.
Yeah, and this we don't know.
It's the never-ending push-ups. That's what we're living in right now.
We're in never-ending push-up land. And it's, you know, so I found myself visiting, as good as I try to be about it, visiting these uncertain moments. And typically it's when I ingest too much media. But the uncertainty is from like, what's real and what's not real and what's happening here and who do I trust and what's this going to look like, and you know, everything from wear a mask, don't wear a mask to, you know, there's just so much uncertainty that there are moments where I'll have a freak out for sure. Today was one of them where I'm like, who's telling the truth? Just tell me the truth.
Totally. So if a client came to you and described themselves in that state, what would you say to them?
Yeah. So I would always go back to what state do you want to be in while you're moving through this? And I think the other part of it is it's okay when you're not being that. So know what you want, know how you want to experience it. It's kind of like um in a snowstorm, some people suffer and they're super cold and some people ski. you know so and so you can have this eye on who you want to be in the face of it. And like I said, I think I've done a pretty good job at it. But when there's times that I'm not, give it grace.
Hmm.
Right? Don't make yourself wrong, because I think for a while, and maybe when I was younger, it was like plow through, do whatever it takes, will myself, do it, make my move, make things happen, go, 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 go. I don't have time for this like other stuff. And now it's more, I have a feeling, acknowledge the feeling,
Hmm.
acknowledge where it's coming from, acknowledge where I'm being triggered, and kind of go, do I want to sit with this for a few minutes and give it some grace and give it some love and give it some healing? And then from there, then you can start kind of loving your way out of it. And then, there's that ability where you have to, it's time to change your focus.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like going back to when my brother died, I run a business. I have, 2 kids, a husband, and a pretty great life. But, obviously I was sad. Like there was some grieving to do. But it wouldn't work for me to be in grief 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because life also has to happen.
Hmm.
And so I think having the ability to change your state and change your focus and focus on what's awesome and what's right in front of you and the outcomes and the things that you're also up to in life, and be able to have that ability to move and focus on what you're grateful and focus on where you're going. And I know that, like, hey, at the end of the day, I've already had an awesome day. I supported my team. I supported my clients. I had a great dinner with my kids. Okay, I'm kind of feeling sad. Okay, I'm feeling sad.
Hmm.
And be sad. Like, be
Yeah.
sad for a minute. The problem is you just don't want to sit there
Yeah.
forever, because then you get caught in a gear that now becomes your identity if you're not careful and you're there too long.
And that back to what you talked about, people kind of have this emotional home. If pretty soon that becomes your emotional home, that
Yes.
sad space, well, then the kids don't get dinner because you're spending time being sad.
Yeah, too
So
long.
somehow it has to come up. You've got to come up. I've dealt with families, who've dealt with the loss of a child. A lot of these families have multiple kids, and going, hey, this hurts and it matters, and feel it.
Oh, yeah.
And look at that child who's still here, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like there's no but there's an and. The and is so important. Yes, it matters and it hurts, and feel that pain. And you have an incredible kid right in front of you. Go make a memory. And it's having the space for both.
The biggest gift you can give yourself is cultivating the ability to manage your own personal state and your own emotions.
Mm.
And the degree in which you're able to do that really dictates the quality of your life.
Wow.
It really is.
Yes. Man, it's so true.
And it, like I said, doesn't mean I don't feel sad or angry or frustrated. I was super frustrated today with all of the riots and that sad video. Like I was sad, I was frustrated, I was angry, so your feelings don't go away. So you still want to process and look at your feelings. You just want to notice how often you're living in feelings that are unresourceful, that don't make you feel good, as opposed to, I'm going to visit it, I'm going to process it, I'm going to get what I need from it, I'm going to decide if I need to take any action from it, and visit it and touch it and move it, and then move through it.
Man, so helpful. Jayne, our time is coming to a close. So there's so much here that's so good. Thank you for taking the time. Before we go, if folks were like, Jayne, I want to hear more, help me, or I could use some coaching, or I love the idea of learning how to be a coach. Is there a place they can go? How can they follow what's happening in your world?
Yeah, so probably the easiest thing to do is to go to jaynejewell.com. So that's JayneJewell.com. And you can kind of check out what I have there. And that's probably a good start.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for taking the time. So good to see you. Please say hi to Alfonso for me, and keep surviving and thriving.